Here's what's new in CloudBees CI 2.303.2.6. Are you new here? If you are, welcome. And if you are new here, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. On October 15th, the latest version of CloudBees CI was released. Now, this release was a little bit different, and we'll look at that in just a few moments. But before we take a look at what's new, take a few moments and go watch this video that I did with Mark Waite on October 7th about what's new in Jenkins LTS 2.303.2. That will take you through a lot of the items that we're going to just sort of gloss over today. But if you want to have a more detailed look at the changes that happen within Jenkins LTS, that's the video to go watch. If you've never been with me before and you're not sure where to find the release notes for CloudBees CI, let me take you to them. We're going to start at docs.cloudbees.com. We're going to click on Documentation, go to CloudBees CI, and then on the Documentation dropdown, we're going to click on Release Notes. And what we're going to see here is that we have the latest as of October 15th, which is 2.303.2.6. However, this was a follow-up release to 2.303.2.5, which was a security release, which was also a follow-up to 2.303.2.3. So what we're going to be taking a look at specifically is the .5 and the .6, because the release notes for .3 were rolled up into .5. So we'll start at .5 and we'll finish on .6. The other thing about this release is there were no new features, bugs, or anything else specific to CloudBees CI for modern cloud platforms. So everything that we're going to be looking at today is under the CloudBees CI for traditional platforms. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over to our .5 traditional full release notes. And what we're going to see here, and this was the note I was just talking about, that this version replaces 2.303.2.3. So all the release notes that were in .3 are pulled up into the .5. And first off, you see that there was a security advisory. Now, if we take a look at the security advisory, we can see that there were a handful of cross-site scripting and improper handling and all of these others that are listed here. Now, all of these in detail were covered in the What's New in Jenkins LTS video that I did with Mark Waite. So if you want more detailed information about those, go watch that video. But specifically for CloudBees CI, there was just one here that related to the Operations Center. And that is this top one here, cross-site scripting vulnerability and Operations Center context. This was the only one that was specific to CloudBees CI. Now let's head back over to our release notes and go into new features. Now, if you've been using Configuration as Code, CASC, for Operations Center, there is a brand new Freestyle job build step that's available to you. Previous to having this step, you would have to create an execute shell step and then put in a couple of lines to do some copies. This step makes that process simpler. And as we move down here into the feature enhancements, the user activity monitoring plugin has been improved. So there's a lot of things that happen under the hood when this plugin is upgraded. If you haven't installed this plugin, you should go ahead and install this plugin as a CloudBees CI administrator. And it will give you information about user activity data and that kind of information. And there's a whole separate section of documentation that goes into counting and monitoring user licenses with the CloudBees User Activity Monitoring plugin. Now let's go down into the resolved section. Specifically for the .5, there was a regression in the RPM install package. So if you're using CentOS, Fedora, Red Hat, there was a problem with that in the 2.3 release that was fixed in the 2.5. Don't forget that. We're going to see something again a little bit later. Now, if you were using CloudBees High Availability for Traditional Platforms, or HA, the default timeout was about 10 seconds. Now the default timeout has been bumped up to 30 seconds because the 10 seconds was a little too aggressive. So now the default is 30. You'll see here as we scroll down through, there are a number of configuration as code or CASC items that were resolved in this release. So if you're using configuration as code for your controllers, as well as for your Operations Center, there are a lot of fixes specifically in this .5 release. And finally, as we get down here towards the bottom for resolved, if you were using Bitbucket, The Bitbucket Teams API was completely deprecated, which caused some of your multi-branch scans to stop working. So now it's using the new Workspace API. That's been fixed. And finally, from a resolved issues, job reloads were registered using the same trigger event multiple times. This is where if you were using the cross-team collaboration feature, specifically using the publish step trigger would sometimes have multiple events showing up in the received event. Again, all of that now shows up with just one instead of multiple. Now let's scroll down to the known issues. Parts of this goes back to that RPM issue that we saw. Spaces in configuration for systemd caused Java startup to fail. Again, this is being fixed. So if we go back here, which I could have just done that, let's go up here to 6. And if we go down here for 6, what we will see here, number 1, is there's actually another resolved issue, an update center status error. And you can read through on this. This is resolved. And there's also the known issue, which all Java Jenkins options are inlined in a single Java argument. This is a known issue still around that RPM change. Now finally, I want to go back to version 5, and go down to one more known issue. Now, you may not be using HA, you may not be running on CentOS or Red Hat, so a lot of these things may not have affected you, but there's a good chance this one might have. Now, if you're using Operations Center Cask with the items YAML, the folder and pipeline job properties are duplicated. So it's going to be corrected in a future version, but if you are using Operations Center Cask, now this is for Operations Center Cask, not your controller Cask. So this is specifically around properties defined in the Operations Center Cask items YAML file are duplicated. So if you have this issue, don't be surprised. A fix is coming in the future. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CloudBees Devs. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.